You were given a tidy version of Jesus, a moral teacher, a sacrifice to pay a debt you could never afford. Believe, behave, wait for later. If that map ever felt too small for the size of your questions, you are not wrong. You did not find this by accident. Something in you has been asking for a different key. The older you get, the more the edges show. You can recite the right lines and still feel a distance you cannot name. You try to be good, and yet the world keeps pulling you into noise and fear. You self-correct, promise to do better, and the loop resets. The standard story explains your failures as sin and your cure as obedience. The Gnostic reading says something more radical. It says you are not broken, you are hidden. This is the split the early mystical Christians pushed into the light. They did not argue that compassion and courage are worthless. They argued that the frame is wrong. They looked at the same figure and heard a different message. Not a warden of guilt, but a revealer of origin. Not a manager of your debt, but a voice telling you the account was never yours in the first place. If you only hear Jesus as the one who fixes you, you wait. You wait for permission, for rescue, for the world to change. If you hear him as the one who wakes you, you move. You move from borrowed fear to direct knowing. You stop outsourcing your center. You stop treating your life like a courtroom and start treating it like a signal. This is not about clever trivia or secret passwords. It is about a basic shift in where you place authority. The Gnostic claim is simple and sharp. The surface world is loud, persuasive, and temporary. It can absorb all your attention. It can turn your gifts into bait. It can train you to worship the mask and forget the face. The alternative is not retreat. The alternative is remembrance. You are a spark of a higher source, and you are here to wake up inside the play. You have felt hints of this already, the quiet certainty that arrives in the middle of a noisy day. The moment you stop chasing and something finds you. The way a single line from a text can split you open even when you do not fully understand why. You know this terrain. You just have not been given a map that respects it. So here is the promise of this journey. By the time you and I reach the garden, you will hear the cup differently. By the time we speak about Judas, betrayal will not mean what you were taught it meant. By the time we stand at the cross, the scene will stop being a contract and start being a lesson in mastery. And when we talk about resurrection, you will not file it under someday. You will look for it while breathing. You will not be asked to suspend your mind. You will be asked to use it. You will not be asked to hate the world. You will be asked to see through it. We will read sayings that sound like riddles and treat them like instructions. We will let the miracles point past themselves. We will take the line you have heard since childhood and turn it until it clicks into place inside your chest. If the official story worked for you, you would not be here. If shame could carry you home, you would be there already. You are here because something in you refuses to be managed by fear. You are here because you have the suspicious courage to ask what else Jesus might have been doing. You are here because you can feel the difference between control and truth. This is the rule we will test against every scene. Does this interpretation make you smaller, or does it wake you up? Does it require you to beg, or does it require you to notice? Does it push your life into later, or does it turn your next hour into practice? If an idea cannot survive those questions, let it fall. If it can, let it reorder you. Keep your attention on one thread as we move. You are not trying to earn a place. You are remembering that you came from one. When the story frames you as a problem, you will look for a manager. When the story frames you as a spark, you will look for a match. The Gnostic Jesus brings fire, not to destroy you, to reveal you. If this sounds dangerous, that is because it dissolves control. If it sounds familiar, that is because part of you has always known. You were taught half the story. You are about to hear the rest. In a minute, Judas will stop being the villain you were taught to hate. If you ever felt out of place in a room that said it had all the answers, this is for you. If the ordinary world has ever felt like a set, you already know the first hint. Streets, screens, rules, even your inner dialogue move in patterns that want you small and busy. The Gnostics gave this pressure a blunt name: the maker of the mask, a craftsman of copies. The Gnostics named him the Demiurge, not the highest, not the source. A builder who thought the workshop was the whole of reality. God above God means the source above the maker, the light above the lamp, the living spring before any cup. The highest is not flattered by titles, temples, or your fear. The highest is known the way fire is known by heat. When you touch it, something in you wakes and refuses the costume. The story begins with fullness. Imagine reality as a sea of living clarity, the pleroma. From this sea, expressions flow like notes from a chord. Wisdom, often named Sophia, reaches toward creation. In the reaching, a copy appears without the full knowing of its origin. That copy builds. It stamps forms. It loves order more than truth. It calls its blueprint everything and tells you to behave. This is the trap. Not matter itself, but forgetting where matter came from. Bodies are not evil. Bodies are instruments. The prison is identification. The jailer is ignorance parading as authority. The Gnostics called its administrators archons, rulers of the threshold. You meet them as loops in the nervous system. Appetite that never says enough. Status that never arrives. Fear of being nobody. Rage at being overlooked. Each loop whispers the same creed. Only what I can count is real. You feel the stamp of this creed in language, the voice that bargains. Prove yourself, then you can rest. The voice that shames. If you were worthy, you would not feel doubt. The voice that divides. Choose a side and do it loudly. None of these voices know the spring. They only know the cup. The architecture of the trap is simple and everywhere. First layer, distraction. Keep your attention sliding on surfaces so it never settles into seeing. Second layer, debt. Make you believe you owe reality something impossible to pay. Third layer, delay. Promise salvation later. After one more condition, one more badge, one more correct sentence. Fourth layer, fear of death. Tie your identity to what perishes, then sell you protection. When these four hold, you will trade your birthright for a pass. How do you recognize the maker at work inside you? You love rules more than life. You police your own breath. You view other people as pieces on your board. You hide your questions because you think questions are disloyal. You recite a story that keeps you safe and small and call it humility. The mask fits, and you forget it is a mask. How do you recognize the highest? A quiet strength arrives without a contract. Clarity does not scream. It widens. You feel less need to perform and more capacity to see. Your sympathy increases while your tolerance for lies drops to zero. You stop praying to be excused from your life and start asking to be shown what is real right now. The kingdom feels near, not because the room changed, but because you stopped mistaking the set for the sky. The Gnostic answer to the trap is not better behavior. The answer is knowledge of origin, not trivia, not passwords. Direct recognition. When you know what you are, the mask has nothing to stick to. You stop negotiating with copies. You use the world like a tool, not a judge. You eat, work, love, build, but you do not worship the receipt. This is why the God above God is a necessary phrase. It cuts through the counterfeit image of a cosmic accountant who needs you anxious to feel important. The highest does not need your fear. The highest does not grow when you shrink. The highest is the ground of the spark in you that refuses to be purchased. When you sense that spark, you are not becoming special. You are becoming accurate. You can test this in small moments. A remark tries to hook you into outrage. You notice the hook, and a space opens before your reply. That space is not apathy. That space is sovereignty. A craving tells you, only this will make the ache stop. You feel the ache and watch the promise pass through without signing the contract. A role invites you to lie to keep the costume. You tell the truth, and the role cracks. In each case, something real stands where habit used to stand. That is knowledge. That is the highest recognized. The archons are not night creatures waiting in alleys. They are the habits at the gate of attention. They ask for your name, your badge, your certainty. You walk past them by remembering what checks them cannot touch. They cannot touch your capacity to witness. They cannot touch the light that knows itself as you. When you stand there, their papers burn up. If this feels severe, good. The trap is persuasive because it works through what you already value: order, responsibility, belonging. It sells you copies of those goods and trains you to distrust the original. The cure is not cynicism. The cure is discernment. Order that serves life is holy. Order that strangles life is idolatry. Responsibility that grows love is holy. Responsibility that performs fear is slavery. Belonging that honors truth is holy. Belonging that punishes awareness is sleep. You may ask, why allow the copy at all? The texts answer with a pattern, not a tidy line. Creation is generous. Freedom is real. A mask can hide a face, but it can also teach a face to know itself. When you meet a copy and remember the source, the copy loses its throne and becomes a teacher. The world remains a stage. You stop calling it a king. Hold this map as we move forward. Highest, then copy. Light, then lamp. Origin, then order. When you forget the sequence, the trap tightens. When you remember it, the same room becomes a passage. You do not need special robes to walk it. You need honesty. You need the stubborn willingness to test every voice by its fruit in your chest. This is where Jesus enters the frame in the Gnostic telling. Not as the manager of the set, but as the one who points past it. He does not ask you to worship the mask. He asks you to see the face. He does not bargain for your debt. He reveals that the creditor was never the source. He does not promise freedom later. He speaks to the spark in you that is free now, under the noise, behind the rolls, before the first rule was written. Keep that spark in view. In the next chapter, you will hear what he actually asked you to do when he said, "Know yourself." Not a slogan, an exit. You were told to believe and wait. He asked you to wake and see. When you hear him through the Gnostic ear, his words stop sounding like rules and start sounding like a method. Not a ladder to heaven later, a switch of perception now. He does not hand you a cage with nicer bars. He hands you a key and points at the lock you forgot was there. Know yourself. You have heard that line so often you can miss its voltage. It is not a slogan for self-importance. It is a command to turn your attention from copies to origin. You know your job, your role, your history. He asks you to know the one who is aware of all of that, the witness before the costume. When you know from there, your actions change weight. The same words carry a different current. The same room stops owning you. Look, the kingdom is within you. If you hear that as poetry, you wait for a mood. If you hear it as instruction, you look. You do not hunt a rare feeling. You locate the quiet place in you that is present before thought forms. It is not dramatic. It is stable. You can be tired and still touch it. You can be anxious and still notice it. You can be in public and still stand there. The Gnostic Jesus keeps pulling your attention to that place because that is where the spark knows itself. This is why his sayings feel like riddles. Riddles bypass the guard at the gate. When he says, "Become passers-by," he is not telling you to abandon your life. He is telling you to stop building a house out of every passing thought. Let experience pass. Let roles pass. Let praise and insult pass. Keep your address in the witness, then move through the market as someone who remembers where home is. Test it today at the store, in traffic, on a call. Even his miracles function like taught parables. Blind see. What is that but attention recovering its sight? He lays hands and hearing returns. What is that but the signal cutting through the noise so you can finally hear what is true in you? He walks on water. What is that but mastery over the emotional surface that drowns you when you forget who is standing on it? Multiplying bread is not only generosity, it is a picture of what happens when you stop gripping from fear. You give from the spring, not the cup, and somehow there is enough. He never asks you to worship suffering. He asks you to see through it. When he tells you to be single, he is not policing romance. He is teaching focus. One eye, one aim. If your aim is to appear correct, you serve the set. If your aim is to be real, you serve the source. The moment you choose the second, your yes and your no gain clean edges. People feel it. Archons hate it. So what do you do with this today? You practice 3 moves until they become your reflex. First, relocate. Several times a day, stop and ask, from where am I seeing right now? If the answer is role, fear, or hunger, step back 1 notch into the witness. Not dissociation, precision. From there, speak and act. You refuse bait without performing superiority. You breathe like someone who is not on trial. Second, interpret. When life throws a story at you, an insult, a bill, a crisis, treat it like a parable. What is it pointing to in you? Where does it hook a loop that says, only this proves you are real? Watch the hook. Naming it removes half its power. Seeing it from the witness removes the rest. This is how the blind see and the deaf hear in ordinary hours. Third, transmit. Your state is a message. You already broadcast something. Choose what. If you carry hidden resentment, you teach the room that love is a negotiation. If you carry quiet clarity, you teach the room that truth is not loud to be strong. You do not need a pulpit. Your nervous system is a speaker. When he says, "Whoever drinks from my mouth will become like me," hear it as, take this state into yourself and let it run your life. Not imitation of gestures, transmission of presence. You will be tempted to turn this into a new badge. I am awake. Others are asleep. That is the set talking with a new accent. Real seeing increases humility because you stop mistaking the mask for the person. You remember how many times you have been fooled by your own voice. Compassion grows, not as softness that refuses clarity, but as clarity that refuses contempt. You will also be tempted to chase novel experiences, lights, visions, rare energies. If they come, do not argue. If they do not beg. The test is simple. After contact, are you more honest, more courageous, more available to reality as it is? If yes, keep walking. If no, you just worshipped a lamp. This is why he rarely answers questions the way a lawyer would. People ask for rulings. He gives orientation. Render to Caesar what is Caesar's. Translation: do not confuse administrative games with your identity. Play them cleanly, but do not sell your name to them. Let the dead bury their dead. Translation: stop letting inertia dress up as duty. Choose life. The last will be first. Translation: invert the pyramid. What the set prizes, status, polish, performance, does not measure truth. None of this cancels action. It purifies it. You still pay bills, keep promises, and build things you can touch. You just stop asking those acts to save you. You stop kneeling to copies. You turn good work into worship by doing it from the witness, not from the loop that begs to be seen. If you want a single sentence to anchor your day, use this: I am not what passes through me. I am the one who sees, and I choose truth. Say it before a meeting. Say it when a fear-panicked voice wakes you at 3 a.m. Say it when you are praised, so you do not sell yourself to applause. That line is not magic. It is a steering wheel. When you approach Jesus with this understanding, you stop asking him to carry what you refuse to see. You bring your entire life into the light and let it be read. If something must die, it is not you. It is the contract you signed with the copy. He is not building a private club for the pure. He is teaching you to remember the source in public. You can feel the ground shifting already. You are less interested in being right and more interested in being real. You recognize the quiet click of alignment more quickly. You lose taste for speeches that sell fear. You begin to notice that courage is not loud and love is not sentimental. They are both forms of accuracy. Hold this posture as we re-enter the familiar scenes. We will not try to win debates. We will look for the method inside the moments. Garden, table, trial, cross, dawn. If you carry the witness into each, the story stops managing you and starts mentoring you. And when someone asks you later what changed, you will not hand them a theory. You will hand them your life, and it will ring true. You arrive in the garden and expect to watch a man plead for escape. Listen again. The cup is not a prop from a tragedy. The cup is the world as trap, the tight weave of fear, debt, and delay that trains you to forget your origin. When he says, "Let this cup pass," you hear a human voice naming the weight of the mask. When he adds, "Not my will, but yours," you are not hearing surrender to the maker of the mask. You are hearing alignment with the source above it. He chooses accuracy over panic. That is the move you practice whenever a loop closes in around your chest and tries to tell you it is the only sky there is. Then he turns to the people who love him and finds them asleep. The scene is painful because it is ordinary. Could you not watch 1 hour? Is not scolding for missing a prayer meeting. It is a diagnosis of attention. You think sleep is harmless until you realize sleep is how the trap renews itself. 1 hour of clear seeing would interrupt years of automatic living. 1 hour of witness would break the contract your fear keeps signing for you. In the garden, you are given a simple instruction. Stay with what is real long enough for the bait to dissolve. You call it vigilance. The early mystics called it knowing. Now you face the villain you were taught to hate. Judas enters the frame, and the room assumes it knows the script. The Gnostic text that bears his name flips the lighting. In that telling, he is the only one who understands the mission. He hands over not a friend to cruelty, but a garment to the fire. In that text, Jesus tells him, "You will sacrifice the man who clothes me," meaning the body as a garment. The body is a robe. The spirit is the wearer. If you mistake the robe for the person, you will cling to form even when truth asks you to let it pass. The betrayal worth fearing is not his kiss. It is your willingness to betray your own knowing because a crowd demands it. You do not have to like this reading to feel its edge. It confronts you with a question you prefer to avoid. What do you hand over when you refuse to be owned by your role? Sometimes you hand over safety, sometimes reputation, sometimes a version of yourself that kept you welcome in a circle built on fear. Every real step toward freedom looks like treason to the part of you sworn to the costume. If you ever felt the sting of that accusation, traitor, ungrateful, disloyal, you already know the atmosphere of this night. The table scene that follows carries a similar inversion. Bread and wine have been turned into a courtroom in many minds, a ration of forgiveness, issued to those who qualify. Hear it through the Gnostic ear, and it becomes nourishment for recognition. "This is my body, this is my blood," is the language of transmission. Take this state into you. Take this clarity into you. Not a ration for the worthy, a meal for the honest. Do not perform it at the edge of your lips. Eat it until it becomes the way you see. When a later text says, "Whoever drinks from my mouth will become like me," you are not being asked to imitate a tone of voice. You are being invited to internalize a presence until it runs your life without effort. If you treat communion as a secret, the room shrinks and fear grows. If you treat it as an inner meal, the room widens and love grows teeth. You do not measure worthiness. You measure honesty. You swallow truth and discover it will not let you hate yourself or your neighbor in peace. You discover that real food dissolves performative holiness and replaces it with courage. You discover that clean seeing is contagious, now the cross. You have been told this is the place where a cosmic judge is finally satisfied. The Gnostic texts refuse that picture. As the Second Treatise of the Great Seth puts it, it was another who drank the vinegar. The point is not to deny pain. The point is to strip pain of its throne. The spirit is untouched even when the form is torn. When you identify entirely with the form, every loss announces the end of you. When you know yourself as spark, loss hurts, but it cannot define you. The cross becomes an exposure of ignorance, a mirror held up to power that thinks it can kill what is not born. This is why forgiveness appears in the middle of the scene, like a clear note. "They know not what they do" is not a sentimental flourish. It is a clinical statement about ignorance. Rulers of the threshold, inside and outside, cannot see past the mask, so they attack the mask. When you answer ignorance with the same blindness it used on you, the set wins. When you answer from the witness, something breaks that cannot be mended by force. The archons hate this because it drains their favorite fuel. The crowd is confused by it because it refuses the old games. But your nervous system recognizes it instantly as home. Take up your cross, then stop sounding like a call to love pain. It sounds like an invitation to carry your form lightly and walk straight through the places where fear tells you to bargain. You keep your word without selling your name. You endure consequences without turning them into identity. You let stories fall off you that were never yours to wear. The horizontal beam is the weight of the world. The vertical is the line of the source. You stand where they meet and refuse to tilt into hatred or despair. And then the word that closes the distance: resurrection. If you keep postponing life, you keep postponing resurrection. You were trained to file it under someday, a headline for later, a reward for endurance. The early mystical voice keeps pulling it into now. One saying is severe on purpose: if you do not receive resurrection while alive, you will receive nothing. You can treat that as an insult, or you can treat it as the most practical instruction you have ever heard. Resurrection is a shift of identity recognized in the middle of your ordinary week. You stop taking yourself to be only what dies. You stop measuring meaning by what can be counted. You notice that the witness was present before your first fear and will be present after your next one, and you begin to live from there. What does that look like when the alarm goes off tomorrow? You face a conversation you wish to avoid and speak cleanly without sharpening your words into weapons. A grief rises and you let it move through without building a shrine to it. An offer arrives that would buy your silence, and you say no without theatrics. You find yourself laughing more because you are less afraid of being nobody. You are not floating above your life. You are inside it with both feet, and yet the ground under those feet is not the crowd's approval anymore. This reading will not make you superior. It will make you responsible. You cannot outsource your seeing to an institution and blame it when you sleep. You cannot worship a ritual and refuse the state it points to. You cannot preach freedom and keep a private contract with fear. The Gnostic Jesus does not hand you a membership card. He hands you a lamp and expects you to walk. If you need a single sentence to carry out of these scenes, take this. Every time the story tightens into control, look for the copy. Every time the story opens into clarity and courage, you are touching the source. Gethsemane teaches you to stay awake to that difference. Judas confronts you with the cost of choosing it. The supper feeds you with the presence that lives it. The cross shows you what cannot be killed. Resurrection names the life that begins when you stop bargaining with fear. You do not have to argue about any of this online. You test it in your next hour. If it makes you smaller, drop it. If it wakes you up, keep it. That is how you read the gospel again without being managed by the set. That is how you become, in the plainest sense, a passerby, fully here, not owned by here, walking in daylight. Remember the order: source before copy, light before lamp. You are not the role you perform. You are the witness who can step one notch back and choose truth. When you forget this, the world owns your breath. When you remember it, you walk the same streets with a different name. You do not need a rarer book to begin. You need one courageous hour of attention. Watch your loops without bargaining. When fear demands a contract, feel it and do not sign. When praise tries to buy you, bow to no one inside. Vigilance is not tension. It is clarity that refuses to sleep. You are not broken. You are hidden. The mask is loud and persuasive, but it is still a mask. If you cannot feel the spark, do not panic. Sit still, even for 2 minutes, and notice the place in you that was present before the next thought formed. That quiet is the door. Enter there. Speak from there. Act from there. Let the world be a workshop, not a king. Use its forms without worshiping them. Keep your word. Pay what you owe. Build what lasts. But do not trade your name for access. Every time you do, you teach your nervous system that fear is your god. Every time you refuse, you teach it that truth is stronger than noise. Read the scenes as instructions. In the garden, stay awake when the loop says sleep. With Judas, release the costume you no longer need. At the table, take presence into you until it becomes your posture. At the cross, carry form lightly and do not let pain write your identity. In resurrection, stop postponing your life to later. Rise while breathing. If you need a sentence to steady you, use this. I am not what passes through me. I am the one who sees, and I choose truth. Say it before conflict, after failure, and in the middle of applause. It will not make you special. It will make you accurate. Measure teachings by fruit, not by volume. If an idea makes you small, feeds contempt, or delays courage, drop it. If it widens your sight, sharpens your honesty, and strengthens your love, keep it. The archons cannot survive that test. They live on confusion and hurry. You starve them by seeing. Do not wait to feel worthy. Begin unready. Tell one hard truth you have been avoiding. Give one clean no where you usually stall. Offer one generous act you do not invoice with resentment later. Then be quiet and notice what breaks and what begins. You will lose some costumes. You will lose a circle built on fear. You will not lose yourself. What remains is simpler and stronger, less theater, more life. You will laugh more easily and kneel to no voice that sells salvation as debt. If this opens something in you, keep going. Share it with someone who can hear without turning it into a badge. Comment, I choose truth, if you are taking this into your next hour. If this widened your sight, like and subscribe. It tells the algorithm to show this to more people like you. You were taught half the story. Now you know where to look for the rest. Not in the noise, in the quiet that does not bargain. Carry that quiet into your next hour. Become a passerby in full daylight, and when the mask leans close and asks for your name, lift your head, remember whose spark you carry, and walk on.